It sounds like more complicated than it is, but it's just, that's the verse.
Hi, this is Alvin Rowe. Today I'm with Cameron Picton to discuss my new band Believe as a album and in general project. And I want to start from that one night in which apparently you had fever dreams and started collecting the ideas for the band and the song Lecture 25.
I don't know, I don't think there was any like plan, or like when that happened I was like, oh, that's what I'm gonna do. It wasn't really the thing, it was just like, just put it in the back of my mind. And then when it came to doing something, I was like, oh, that kind of works. And it kind of like works for how I've been operating. I never really had any plan at any point. In my experience, having some grand plan just means like it never ever works out the same way that you imagine it's going to. Maybe like 1 in 10 times.
After that, in all the past year, I have the idea that you created this band, my new band Believe, as a sort of collective, and you've been playing around with different formations. But what you've been playing so far is not much. There are some songs from the album, but it's most like improvising on it based on some of the ideas from the songs.
Yeah, kind of like when like I started to do the shows, was the band as an idea or whatever had existed for what, I don't know, like 9 months at that point. But I'd kind of put off doing the shows until the album was finished, or like basically finished. And then, you know, I'd played with the same kind of 4 people basically for like 7 years pretty much. So I thought, well, I might as well just do loads of shows in London with loads of different people and see what happens and see what comes of that. And then obviously it kind of works with the name. To just kind of, and like, you know, when you're in London you have the luxury of time and you can book things last minute and you can say, oh well, let's just do this next week. And you know, everyone has lives going on and people are much more happy to commit to something that's like, well, I only have to do a few days of work on this, or like no days of work on this, and just turn up. So with that in mind, I like wrote a few new songs that were well, at least the idea was that they would be super simple, like just 2 chords or whatever. And you know, then you can just take them to people and say, like, we don't have to rehearse this very much, if at all, just come and we'll see what happens. And you know, same thing, it's like, if it's good, then, you know, let's do more, or like, if it's not good, maybe let's have another try.
Before all this, though, some of the songs already existed. I think a couple were included in the Camera Picture CDs, or maybe already performed live. Like, what was the body of work that you skimmed through to get to the track list of the album, My New Band Believe?
I just tried recording a lot of tracks. You know, when you play a song live, it gives you an idea of whether the song is worth carrying on with or not. But then also sometimes it doesn't really feel great until you go into the studio, and then suddenly like you make a small change here, make a small change there, and it feels a lot better. I also don't really, I'm a bit lazy when it comes to like changing things between shows. So like, there'll be a line that I'll think, this is a shit line. and then like as I'm singing it, if I don't think of anything better in the moment, then I won't change it until like it comes to doing it in the studio. So there were lots of songs that we recorded or started recording, and then you sort of say, let's do something else. But then it kind of just ended up being the 8 songs that are on the record. There were obviously like numerology I was never considered doing for this record, just because if I don't know, I think if you obviously listen to the record, it's like a completely different sound world, or like completely different energy anyway. So that was the thing of like, there was definitely a few songs that I was like, let's not do this. But there were some other things that at the beginning I was like, this will definitely be on the thing. This will be like right in the middle, and then it wasn't. And then we did it, and we were like, I know, me, Mike, and Jasper just kind of thought, this doesn't really seem worth like pursuing.
So the Lecture of 25 and the Numerology were out of the album because it just felt like it was a completely different energy. Because I feel like I understand what you mean, but I also feel like it's maybe more in the way they are arranged, especially in Numerology, which sounds very different, but I could also imagine it.
Well, I'd done Numerology with like an Octatrack as a drum machine, like live. That's the fire alarm, which usually doesn't mean anything, but we'll see.
Goodbye, everyone. See you in hell.
What was I talking about? Oh yeah, Numerology, like, yeah, that was just like done with the drum machine, and also was like, let's do a Jersey club track. So just basically had no place on the record. Didn't really, just didn't feel like in the same world. And then Lecture that was done because I just had like, basically Mike and Jasper were finishing mixing Caroline 2, and then I was kind of twiddling my thumbs. Like, we had half of the record kind of like semi-tracked, but then not really, and had some studio time booked, but just like there were a couple of weeks where I just kind of was just chilling at home, so I wrote those songs. So just had that idea to do it really quickly. There was like a moment where I thought, maybe it's worth doing a different version of the track for the album. But it just like never really came together, and I don't think it would have been very good.
It's interesting that they came after all these, and because of course the listener perception is probably the opposite, just because of the timeline.
Yeah, because I finished all the recording, and then after we finished all the recording, that's when Numerology happened. But Lecture was kind of done like in the middle of the process. It was like a side mission. So
like a spin-off project.
Yeah.
So you've been working on this for a long time, because the album was already kind of like in the air since at this point, I guess, a couple of years almost. And I was wondering how was the process to work with Jasper and Mike from Caroline.
It was great. I mean, I think the project was like procrastinated for a long time. Like, I did a bunch of other things. Like, I did the mixtapes, and it was just like kind of like just didn't really necessarily want to do the album properly for a while. So it took like after the band kind of like finished touring / broke up, I was like, I want to have like a full year where I don't really do any like proper music. So then the like mixtapes and like solo touring was kind of a good way of doing stuff that was a bit more like under the radar, or that was kind of like not necessarily like vying for any sort of like real attention, or like to get
like
PR'd or anything
promotional
like that.
cycle.
Yeah, exactly. And then like I'd spoken to those guys for a while about doing this kind of like collaborative thing, where basically like when Black Midi was breaking up, I was like, oh, what do I want to do next? Like, and I didn't really want to join it, or like I didn't really want to start another band, and I didn't want to do a solo project. So I kind of thought like doing something similar to what Jim O'Rourke did in the 90s, which is just like playing around loads of different bands and just kind of like joining a band for a bit and saying, let's do an album together and let's tour a little bit, and like, or I don't know what Johnny Marr kind of did it with the Cribs, just like joining and just seeing what happens, and then there's like no real, like, I'm not really in the band, but like I'm kind of involved creatively. So there was like, it was the idea for me to do that with Caroline, because I had some of these songs that I was working on, and I thought that they would kind of suit them as a group. They're also quite versatile musicians. They'll play a few different instruments, and there's also no like set lead singer, which I thought was interesting. I also wanted to do something where there were multiple singers. I mean, it's funny because the album obviously ended up being pretty much just me singing everything, but that was the idea, and it didn't really work out, just more for like logistical reasons, because there's 8 of them, and it's quite hard to get them all in a room anyway. So,
and I mean, if I understand the timeline correctly, they were also probably quite much,
yeah, they were
quite
doing
a lot involved with the Caroline 2, which is
which was
deal.
kind of like half, like I knew what I was doing getting into it, because I was like, well, we can talk about this project and like have something ticking under, but I know that it's not going to do anything, and also don't really want to do anything, so like we can just talk about this and like maybe do a little bit of work on it, but I kind of want to work on other things concurrently, but we'll just have this in the background as like the main thing that's ticking away, and it'll happen at some point, but I don't really want to do anything right now, or like I kind of want to do random stuff that's not really related to like doing an album cycle, or like suddenly going on tour, or all this sort of stuff. So it kind of worked out weirdly in my favor that they were doing the album, because I'd just be like, okay, well, when you're done with that, let's do it properly. But I knew that they worked slowly, so I was a bit like, cool.
And then also a lot of them were involved for this reason in the recordings. But I don't know if it's possible to get like a full picture of all the musicians you worked with for as recording on the album or playing even just, well, a single gig maybe is too much, but there is like a very vast group of people that you worked with for this.
If you just kind of get whoever's around, in like if you say like okay we should record some piano next week, and you kind of just get whoever's around next week and you find whatever studio is available next week, so you just kind of end up naturally working with loads of different people, which is half what I wanted to do anyway. It also means that there's less pressure on the sessions. Like I didn't really prepare that much for them, the musicians didn't have to prepare that much for them, just come in and see what happens.
I think it's quite difficult or maybe strange to pinpoint like main influences for this record, but at the same time like you could name probably tons of different artists and I would be like, yeah, that makes sense. But I have the impression that your music is also very much informed by the musicians in London, and also for the fact that I think Kieran Leonard worked a lot on this album, and Love Story is kind of like quote 62 by Jockstrap. I was wondering how much is the impact of like the musicians, the artists around you on your own creativity?
It's just good to work with loads of people, and it's also like a lot of these people are just my friends. I think it's interesting to get the sound of something that like you would never think of doing from someone else, and also to push people beyond necessarily what they usually would do. You know, in a lot of the sessions for the first like half an hour, people just kind of will resort to like just kind of stock licks or whatever that they usually do, and then like, you know, slowly you kind of like push them away from that, and then you sort of start to get to something that is like not really them but also not really you, and it's kind of like without really necessarily like talking about it too much, you kind of get something quite good or like potentially good, and you don't have to give that much direction, you just have to keep doing it. It's the same principle of like early on with like when we were doing Black Midi improvisation or whatever in rehearsals, and there's obviously like limits to it, but you know, if you do it like with good intention, the first like hour or half an hour of playing that you do is a bit crap, or like you probably think at the beginning this is all right, and then it kind of goes lulls a bit, and then you're like, oh, then towards the end you suddenly like find the like one idea that's really good and that works for the piece after kind of like not really necessarily talking through it or like really having like a discussion, but you just kind of like feels relatively natural.
But I also, to be honest, I get the idea that you put it very simple, like maybe because we're talking about like very good musicians, but I was wondering, like, for instance, if you remember and can recollect like one of the processes of like one of the songs, like if you remember how it kind of started and like if it went through different phases of maybe structure or arrangement and then the recording, like the final production, like if there were like passages in between, because I imagine that the song like Actress, I doubt that someone just comes to the studio and they just play it, because there's a lot of different sections, and
well, I think that's kind of what I'm talking about, where it's like if we say like the piano on Actress, like there's 15 like takes kind of throughout the whole track of like where we've and like gone through different bits and said try this, try this, try this, and then or like try something melodic or like play the chords or just play straight. Basically, the recording process for a lot of the tracks was record the guitar and drums together, just me and a drummer. So this one was Charlie Wayne from Black Country, and basically just get the basic guitar and drum track with like a guide vocal that wasn't used, obviously, just more like for reference, and also like to communicate with Charlie, like do this here or whatever. You start with that, and then basically I did like some guitar overdubs, like just like melodic bits and things like that, and then you just start just putting more stuff on it basically. So the next thing was getting Finn in for piano, and you know, you start with the intro and you say, okay, just do block chords or like do arpeggios or, you know, play something melodic, whatever, just kind of give very vague notes.
This was already with like a final structure and chords and
well, I doubled up the chorus at the end. I just copied and pasted it. Everything is totally editable. That's the thing, is that like I think with a lot of like Black MIDI records, we always talked about like, oh, we should do loads of editing and stuff, but I don't think it's necessarily as present as it is on the, like the first album. There's like one track where it cuts to like a tape machine that's just been just like one mic recording of the room, and then it goes back to the multi-track. But we kind of didn't really do that much, whereas now with this one, because I had control of the project file, I could like edit it loads and like double up certain sections in the way that I wanted. And also like sometimes when you're in the studio working with another producer that is on the Pro Tools or whatever, you're thinking about, well, this is something we could do later, but we should probably be using the studio to record stuff now.
Yeah.
Whereas this, I can kind of just do it in bed. and it's fine. So like, you know, it's just convenient basically, and it just means that you can do lots more of that kind of stuff where you do like a hard cut in a certain section, or you like try loads of different things. Like you can really like minutely control the performance, and because also like none of this was recorded to a grid or gridded at any point, you can really like play with like the milliseconds of where certain things come in, or like a whole section be like, oh, let's just hold this for like 10 milliseconds longer or whatever. The next thing was like doing the upright bass, which was a similar thing of just like getting a few takes, saying, okay, good, with Caius and Steve. And, you know, Steve, like, he's the improvising drummer, so doesn't really, like, didn't listen to the songs beforehand, I don't think. And just kind of play through the songs a few times, go through different sections when you want a specific thing, you play it through. And then, like, there was just a lot of, like, you know, I think there's like eight layers of Steve on the track, and you just say like, okay, well, you know, each layer there's maybe only like one thing happening in like a minute stretch or whatever.
I've read that you kind of set some rules for the project, and I was wondering why you kind of chose not to use, or the idea was not to use electric instrument, for instance, or there were some kind of boundaries that you tried to set at the beginning.
I think when the electric guitar can be like quite an imposing thing on a record, and I just thought it'd be interesting to like get the sustain that you get from electric guitars. Like we go back to Actress, like the choruses at the end, you could like really just ring out guitar chords easily and fill the space, and you know, it would sound pretty good. But it's just kind of like, well, then you're doing it with strings this time, or like do it with pianos, and you just got a different texture. And I obviously done loads of electric guitar or rock records, so just trying to do something different basically, or trying to get the same feeling or fill the space with a different arrangement basically.
I have the feeling you play like in very like write more than play in more out of instinct, because to me like the way you explain it feels very natural. And maybe me that I overthinking, then I see it like all spread out. It's like a prog suite structure.
I think
then
it's
a central part,
I
and
think
that
it's a
part
lot
becomes
simpler than it sounds. It's just how it, you know, just think what feels right for the next section. Like where should this go? That kind of thing. And then I don't know. There's like it sounds like more complicated than it is, but it's just that's the verse, and then that kind of thing. And then I don't know, it's like there's just these other random bridges like, which that's not that's like the bridge. And then obviously like a lot of the songs, there's lots of different ideas, and like they've changed over time. The Love Story track, I had like a very the arrangement, the way it sounds on the record is like pretty much all like how I wanted it to sound before I recorded it. But then there's other tracks which like I was not really that interested in them being on the record. But then like certain little arrangement things meant that they started to like become a bit more of an interesting proposition.
What's gonna happen live? Like now that you're going on tour after the album release, are you gonna perform the album, or is it gonna be more similar to what you've done live so far?
It would be obviously cool to perform the album as it is with like 30 people playing, but also even then, like practically it's kind of impossible. But you know, the songs are performable with a 4-piece rock band as well. Whatever works in the moment. That's like one of the things of all the like workshop shows as well, is that you try out doing these kinds of songs with different lineups and different arrangements, and you know, do it underworld style, or do it with like, do it close to the album, or do it with like a rock band or whatever.